one.
All right, we're explaining the difference between learning outcomes and instructional goals in the EMS curriculum. An instructional goal is simply the content or skill that an instructor plans to teach a student. An example is, I'm going to teach a student how to trace a drop of blood through the heart. This is a measurable event. An instructional goal is intrinsically tied to the instructor's ability to teach. A skillful teacher is able to discern how a student learns and devises a creative way to present information so that they can understand, retain, and apply what they've learned. On the other hand, a learning outcome is how the student responds to the teaching and what they understand and retain. An example of predicted learning outcomes is by the end of this class, the student will be able to trace a drop of blood through the heart. This again is a measurable outcome. There's two main things that determine the success of a teaching objective. Is the receptiveness of the student and the ability of the teacher to instruct. The lecture style classroom has become obsolete. It's evident that forcing the student to conform to a current educational construct does not help every single student. The success of teaching objectives is a teacher's approach. So it's up to the instructor to take responsibility for learning outcomes of their students and determine how their students teach or how their students adapt to the different orders of the students. EMS programs are among the first to implement this sort of approach. The student's not running to keep up with the instructor, but the instructor is keeping pace with the student. This is an unpopular approach because it's difficult. Discerning the needs of the student requires the instructor to be actively engaged with each individual in the classroom and to develop strategies that support the learning styles of the individual student. The instructor must also be familiar with the group dynamics playing out within the class to be aware of the classroom's collective personalities. So we're going to characterize now the goals and outcomes. EMS is goal-driven. It's a goal-driven field. The objective is very simple: keep the patient alive. This objective never changes, and yet every other variable in the equation just might. These variables impact the outcome of patient care. The teaching objective is to train a response, and the learning outcome is the total mastery of that response. I see this, I do this. The student should be trained to understand how his actions or her actions correspond to the goal and master practical hands-on knowledge to apply what they've been taught in any situation. Teaching objectives are guides for the instructor. The outcomes are merely reflections on how effective the teacher's strategies influence the individual student. So here's some different approaches. Scenario style learning. This method is employed immediately as soon as a person enters a program to gauge their response, their stress to emergency scenarios, but also reshape their mindset. Both as a student and as a first responder, do what you know to do. You have immediate positive feedback from peers and instructors in this scenario-based learning. Another tool is multiple intelligence approach. The teacher teaches the strengths of individual students' learning styles. Multiple intelligence approach puts responsibility on the teacher to find the different patterns to present to the student with information that is based off of their top 3 learning styles. A third tier is repetition, attacking the mind with multiple intelligence. We have various intelligence that people have. This is all goes hand in hand with Bloom's taxonomy as well. They're auditory, visual, spatial, sequential, kinesthetic, linguistic, mathematical, interpersonal, and musical. Another tool to use is called mind mapping. It's taking a picture or diagram and branching out like neurons in the brain. Then we have individual student approach. The individual student approach is you're doing more one-on-one. Last but not least, pattern recognition. We are repetitive in nature. Learning sets, signs, symptoms, history.